5 aliens are dead, but that's only the beginning. While Hal discovers that someone is hiding alien technology in Rushville, John receives an even bigger threat. He has only 48 hours to find a dangerous hunter hiding among humans, before the entire town is destroyed. The episode begins with John being woken up by Hal dumping a bucket of cold water on him. Annoyed, John takes the opportunity to ask what the Guardians said about the 4 aliens found dead on the playing field, as well as the one who exploded inside the sheriff's office. Hal, however, makes it clear that he has no intention of calling the Guardians about any of that. As far as he's concerned, the only reason he's there is to train John, so he wants him to put the investigation aside for now. Hal reminds him that he's been asking for a month to learn how to fly, which means the time has finally come. John tries to point out that they still have an investigation on their hands, but Hal insists that for the moment, he needs to forget about the case and focus entirely on his training. To get started, Hal gives him the ring and simply tells him to fly. John is obviously expecting something a little more helpful, but according to Hal, it should come naturally. Since Hal used to be a fighter pilot, the idea of flying feels completely instinctive to him, so his only advice is for John to focus and do the same. John gives it a try, but instead of lifting off, he accidentally creates a small bird with the ring. Not long after that, the ring warns him that it's almost completely drained. Hal uses the opportunity to show him how to restore some of its energy, but the charge only reaches 5%. Because of that, Hal completely changes the plan. Since John failed to fly, he'll have to do things the old-fashioned way and take a plane to Coast City to retrieve the lantern used to recharge the ring. Hal even reveals that he had already booked the flight ahead of time, making it pretty obvious that he never had much faith in John actually managing to fly that day. Before leaving, Hal also tells him to feed Earl, who's staying at his house. But he has one more training exercise prepared. John has to take the bird he just created with him and keep it alive throughout the entire trip. If he loses focus and the bird disappears, he fails the exercise. While John heads to Coast City, Hal stays behind in Rushville. After checking around the area, he tries calling the sheriff's office, but all he gets is voicemail. To make matters worse, shortly afterward, his ring finally runs completely out of power. A few minutes later, Hal shows up at a community meeting where Carrie is discussing whether they should still hold Friday night's football game after everything that happened. Some people believe it could be too traumatic, while others think going ahead with the game might actually help bring the town together. There, Hal runs into Will Macon again, who has some good news for him. He managed to convince the judge to drop the assault charges against Hal, meaning that technically, Hal is now free to leave Rushville and return to Coast City. But that only makes Hal even more suspicious. It feels like everyone is a little too eager to get him out of town. So he starts questioning Billy about what happened. He asks why his father's men opened fire on the 4 aliens at the football field, and more importantly, how they knew exactly who they were supposed to shoot. Billy claims they were just acting on a hunch, but Hal isn't buying it. As far as he's concerned, killing 4 people simply because someone suspected they might be aliens makes absolutely no sense. Hal also brings up the fact that one of their associates later showed up at the sheriff's office talking about revenge before exploding. He clearly believes the 2 incidents are connected, and he wants to know what Billy is hiding. Since Billy is also his attorney, Hal takes the opportunity to remind him that anything they discuss is still protected by attorney-client privilege. Their conversation starts drawing too much attention during the meeting, especially when Carrie tells them to keep quiet. Hal tries to hold it together, but that clearly isn't his strong suit. Luckily, John calls him at that exact moment, giving Hal the perfect excuse to step outside the meeting and answer the phone. John tells him he's already made it to Hal's house, but he can't find the key. Hal explains that it's hidden under a rock by the entrance, one that supposedly looks like a smiling potato, or a sad one, depending on how he left it. As John enters the house, he asks how things are going back in Rushville. Hal admits he gets the feeling everyone wants him out of town, which only makes him even more determined to stay and keep investigating. John, meanwhile, is stunned by the size of Hal's house, and even asks how much money Green Lanterns actually make. Hal says not nearly enough, and explains that the property was actually a gift from a millionaire whose son he saved years ago. The strange part is that even after living there for 8 years, he barely owns any furniture. Following Hal's instructions, John heads into his bedroom and finds a box hidden inside the closet. Opening it requires Hal's voice, So Hal recites a security phrase and manages to unlock it remotely. Inside is the lantern they need to recharge the ring. At first, John doesn't see anything, but Hal explains that it's portable and tells him to reach into the box until he finds it. John finally pulls it out, and Hal reminds him that there's still one more part of the mission: feeding Earl. John heads to the kitchen and finds food prepared specifically for Earl, a mixture of beef and bison. The only problem is that he still has no idea what kind of pet he's supposed to be looking for. After calling his name several times, Earl finally appears and turns out to be a massive carnivorous plant. Meanwhile, Hal continues his own investigation in Rushville. He returns to the stadium with the body he took from the morgue and begins testing the detectors installed at the entrance. The moment he brings the body close, the device reacts. That confirms something important. These aren't ordinary metal detectors. The technology was specifically designed to identify extraterrestrials. Back in Coast City, John is suddenly caught off guard by someone. Before he can fully defend himself, he's hit with an electrical charge and knocked unconscious. When he wakes up, his captors are transporting him somewhere. With help from the bird, John manages to start fighting back. Things quickly spiral out of control inside the vehicle, and John eventually escapes. Luckily, he manages to stay focused enough to keep the bird alive, right up until he gets hit by a station wagon and is knocked unconscious all over again. Back in Rushville, Carrie finds out what Hal has been doing with the bodies. Hal tries to joke by asking if the problem is that his car isn't insured, but he obviously knows exactly why she's angry. Hal explains that he tried to talk to her during the meeting, and when that didn't work, he decided to investigate on his own. Carrie is fed up with his methods, but Hal insists there's a lot more going on in town than anyone is letting on. He then reveals what he just discovered. He took the bodies to the stadium detectors and confirmed that the devices reacted to them. Carrie finally admits the obvious. Those machines are actually alien detectors. Now, Hal immediately wants to know who installed them. Carrie admits it was her father-in-law, Will Macon. She warns Hal that Macon was friendly when Hal needed to find out whether the prisoner was an alien. But that doesn't mean he'll be nearly as welcoming if Hal shows up investigating him. Hal has no intention of letting it go. If Macon somehow got his hands on alien technology as advanced as those detectors, Hal wants to know where it came from and what else he might be hiding. Carrie eventually agrees to take him to the ranch, but under one very simple condition. Hal keeps his mouth shut and lets her do all the talking. Hal and Carrie arrive at Will Macon's ranch, but one of his men blocks their way and demands a warrant. As expected, Hal lasts about 5 seconds before breaking his promise to stay quiet. Macon himself soon appears and says he doesn't understand why Hal is still in Rushville. The aliens from the field are dead, and Wayland supposedly died under unusual circumstances. Hal responds that everyone being so desperate to get rid of him is exactly what makes him think they're hiding something. Hal then reveals that he tested the 4 bodies against the detectors at the stadium, and the devices reacted immediately. He's traveled all across the galaxy, and even he says he's never seen detection technology that sophisticated. Macon finally admits the devices came from his mysterious benefactor. According to him, he had them installed because he refuses to let his people be caught off guard, the way the people who lived on that land before them once were. Hal tries to learn the benefactor's identity, but Macon claims he's bound by a non-disclosure agreement. Naturally, that only makes Hal even more suspicious. Now, he also wants to know what other kind of technology Macon might be hiding inside the ranch. Macon warns him that there's an armed guard watching the property, ready to stop anyone who tries to enter. Carrie tries to stop Hal, but he moves forward anyway, confident that his ring will protect him. There's just one small problem. His ring is still almost completely drained. Hal barely makes it onto the property before he's taken down. Meanwhile, John is tied up while talking to Anton about the Manhunters. John insists he knows nothing about them and says there's no point in torturing him for information about Hal, since the two of them don't even get along that well. Anton, however, makes it clear that they're not trying to torture him. They want to recruit him.
There was a time of chaos in the galaxy. Then the Manhunters came. We don't know where they came from, just that they were synthetic. And able to build new bodies, which meant they could take the form of any species and embed, undetected, within any society. This ability to build allowed them to invent technologies far beyond the limits of the planets they inhabited. They were brutal.
Anton explains that, in the past, entire species vanished, and that one of those aliens remained on the planet where it eventually caused an actual Holocaust. Then Anton tells John that he wants him to understand what it feels like to be hurt by someone you love, and to experience the kind of devastation a manhunter can cause when it wipes out an entire town. After being forced to experience everything that happened, John is visibly exhausted, so Anton finally releases him, now that he understands the same pain Anton's people went through.
Lantern took the monster into his custody and guaranteed he'd be executed.
Why?
I do not know. It does not matter, but we believe somewhere the Manhunter was still alive. So we searched. John, we searched for years, until finally we discovered where he was hiding.
They also explain that the only way to find the Manhunter is by tracking its radiation. The problem is that they have to be close enough to detect it. Even if it disguises itself as a human, they'll still be able to find it. And since they already know it's somewhere in Rushville, they need John to enter the town because they themselves would be detected far too easily.
Now we could fulfill our mission by walking into the town square and detonating ourselves, but that would destroy Rushville.
Anton also tells him they can use the bird to prevent any more unnecessary deaths. Meanwhile, Hal wakes up in the hospital, where Carrie tells him he was shot.
So, what's with Sinestro?
Why are you asking me that?
Carrie explains that Hal kept saying that name while he was unconscious.
It says here he was a lantern, attempted a coup, killed one of the bosses. It also says you were the one who took him down.
Hal asks her to let him leave, but Carrie warns him that if he wants to get out of there, he'll have to start listening to her from now on. Hal admits that he's been reckless, apologizes, and promises to let Carrie do her job. She makes it clear that if there are sides in all of this, she isn't on anyone's side but her own, and she'll do whatever it takes to keep order in her town. That's when Hal takes the opportunity to ask about the aliens.
Because every time you don't listen, or you steal bodies, or storm my father-in-law's compound,
Carrie admits that she regrets the way she's been treating him.
if you don't follow my lead, you're legitimizing this idea that Macon is the seat of power. And trust me, you do not want to help push that narrative.
Especially now that she knows he's trying to stop an invasion. Even so, she also has a few things to thank him for, starting with the fact that she's still alive.
The others were dead. I assumed if Wayland didn't set off the alarm, he wasn't an alien.
Before letting him go, she asks him one final question. Why does he insist on staying when the entire town seems like it's about to lose its mind? When Hal is finally discharged, he realizes he was practically the only patient in the entire hospital. Trying to break the ice, he asks Carrie where she's from.
Well, you don't exactly scream Rushville.
You're a snob.
It doesn't mean I'm wrong.
I'm from Gotham. Moved here on a whim.
That sounds like a story.
Doesn't it?
As they walk through the halls, Carrie explains that since it's such a small town, they don't usually have many patients anyway. Later, John arrives at a coffee shop with the bird. There, he runs into Zoe, who points out that in a town this small, it was only a matter of time before they crossed paths again. John takes the opportunity to tell her he regrets what happened between them, because if he had known she was married, it never would have happened. The two end up talking about Zoe's relationship with her husband. She admits that he can be a difficult man, but he also gives her a certain sense of security. John makes fun of the situation, pointing out the irony of her being with a white guy with a savior complex. But Zoe insists that even if their relationship looks complicated from the outside, there is real love between them. Zoe then brings up another white guy, Hal, although John says he's simply trying to learn how to trust him. After they finish their coffee, Zoe takes John to a motel where he finally meets up with Hal. Hal tells him that Zoe's husband was actually the one who shot him.
Told you not to bring the suit.
Yeah, well, maybe I couldn't bring myself to just disrespect it.
What else were you doing when you were rummaging through my stuff?
Hal explains that he's convinced they're hiding something at Will's ranch, but John quickly drops the subject after discovering alien slime inside the car. That's when he directly asks Hal about the Manhunters and tells him that Wayland and his men kidnapped him to question him about them. John explains that they've now sent him to identify the Manhunter, and that he only has a limited amount of time to find it. He also makes it clear that they don't trust Hal either, and that they apparently already knew something unusual was hiding somewhere in town. John also explains that creating a living creature without wearing the ring should be practically impossible.
I knew there was something about this place. In my gut, he's never wrong.
After entering his room, Hal pulls the suit out of his suitcase once again, determined to use it to leave the planet. But just as he reaches the location, he suddenly finds himself face to face with Sinestro.
Tell me what you know about Manhunters.
No, hello. No, how have I been?
Hello, Sinestro. How have you been? What the fuck do you know about Manhunters?
And with the threat of a catastrophe drawing closer to Earth, along with Sinestro's unexpected appearance, the episode comes to an end.